This question is for Father Paschal. I actually have two. The other one is for Joanne Grainger. My name is Deirdre Little. I'm actually a GP. I work in obstetrics in North Coast, New South Wales. My question for Father Paschal is relating to, you mentioned that there was theological debate ongoing about the time of ensoulment. I'm always puzzled, would that be Catholic theologians who are still debating that? And since the science of embryology confirms the moment of the beginning of life very clearly and easily at conception, and since Mary herself has told us, I am the Immaculate Conception. We recently were in Lourdes taking a group of World Youth Day kids to Lourdes, and of course that was very clearly one of Mary's messages. So given that we have that message from Mary herself approved by the Church, given we have the science of embryology defining the moment of the beginning of life, why is there still Catholic theological debate about the time of ensoulment?
You are correct that the Church doesn't define a time of ensoulment, mainly because ensoulment is not an empirical sort of process. It's not something that can be determined or visualised. However, the Church very clearly says that while we can't define that, in terms of science, that we must treat the embryo from the moment of conception as a human person. So we must treat it as an ensouled human being, even though empirically we can't confirm that or determine it. So it can't define, sort of on scientific grounds, but it will say that we must treat it in that case.
So the theological debate that exists is purely theoretical, that's peripheral to the Church's teaching at the current time?
I must say that there are some theologians out there that will have some theories of ensoulment which I find very difficult to marry with Christian understanding, Christian theology. Nonetheless, because the Church says because that the ensoul is directly infused by God Himself, as opposed to the created matter which comes from parents, that it's not something that can be proven. So,
I understand. That's fine. Thank you. And my second question, or really a comment, I suppose, is for Joanne. I agree with you totally. I find I have in my desk drawer little models of fetuses which are about 10 weeks gestation. And I find that a very positive thing to show somebody who's pregnant, your baby is about this size now, or a little smaller, or a little bigger, whatever. And I also have some rather beautiful pictures of living babies. And certainly I totally agree with you about the ability of life to touch life in that way. That's really good. I have a little bit of an issue sometimes with having read the book Woman-Centred Care. I have a little bit of a problem, and I know John Paul did use the phrase, Pope John Paul, but as an obstetrician I have two patients, the mother and the baby. And it was stated in the book on woman-centred care that what is good for the mother is of course good for the child, which is not actually necessarily true, and in medicine there are many, many, many scenarios where what is actually best for the mother is quite deleterious for the child in terms of medications and treatments and things like that. So I've always favoured the phrase, mother-centred care, and those are the reasons why I have perhaps a little bit of an issue with woman-centred care and the pragmatism that sort of can follow from that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that first and foremost, the woman who is pregnant unexpectedly, and this is sort of the context that we're looking at here, is often coming to some decisions where she doesn't even want to acknowledge the fact that she's pregnant. In approaching a woman-centred care, yes, we do acknowledge the fact that that there are two lives here, and even in the woman-centred approach, we do say that there are two lives. And I know there's been some criticism presented of John Paul and this woman-centred approach that's been taken, that, oh, you know, have you just forgotten about the unborn child? This is a different approach. This is an approach saying, not ignoring the woman, the fact that the woman's pregnant and the inherent rights of the child. But what we're hoping to do with the women-centred approach, and I'll get Marcia maybe to add on this because it's an area that she's strongly involved in, is by acknowledging the inherent dignity of the child that the woman has through supporting her and being with her and actually giving her support, the woman herself, in everything that she's going about. So the fact that she's not separated from this child, that is part and parcel of her life right now. But what does she need in her life to actually help her make a decision to hopefully keep that child? So I think that's where the woman-centred approach phrase comes from.
I think that's right, Jo, and I don't have much to add, but I think in John Paul II's approach, he's calling for the church to respond in a pastoral way, and so we're obviously wanting to acknowledge that there's two people here that we're concerned for, and perhaps, Deirdre, in the finer minutiae of your practice, you're talking about medical care and you're quite entitled to call it mother care, which of course it is, but it's not exactly the same thing that we're perhaps talking about here when we're talking about pastoral care. That would be all that I'd have to